right, looks like it is recording. Okay, so I'm gonna break up the next hour and 40 minutes into two halves. The first is really going to be kind of an explanation of the interface, terminology, different basic kind of like if you were to click through it, what do the actual screens mean, and what data is getting to those screens, and kind of why. And then the second half being like diving into some data, looking at some insights, possibly setting up some goals, and possibly looking at more of the advanced kind of features of it. The one thing about Google Analytics, especially in the past 2 years, is that Google is continuously changing the interface and the words that they use of things. And so I might even be discovering some new stuff that they've just released in the last month or so, like going through each one of the different areas, because they just change it so often, more than Facebook even. So the first thing is, if you already have a university website, if you manage one of them, you already have Google Analytics installed on your site. We do them for every site that we already manage, so you don't have to worry about it. If you don't have access to that account, please just email web@wayne and let us know what domains or what sites that you oversee or want to get the analytics for, and you'll need to have a Google account. It's not necessarily a Gmail account, but if you just go to let's go here, Google accounts.google.com, you can sign up for a new account. You go to create an account, and you can use an existing email address. Yeah, use your current email address. Oh, hold up. Actually, they might have just changed this. Yes, Matt. Oh, yeah.
When you give demonstrations and do certain things, you use incognito.
Yes.
Why is that?
So in some instances, I'll use incognito within Chrome to show you things. What incognito is if you use Chrome or if you use Firefox, they have the same type of thing, or Safari does too. If you go to File, New Incognito window, it basically opens a new browser window with a fresh set of sessions, cookies, everything. So this browser now is launched as if I'm on a fresh, brand new computer. And anything I do within this browser session stays within this browser session. So if I log in and then I open a new tab and I go back to Gmail, I'll be still logged in, right? But as soon as I close that incognito window, all of those cookies, session information, and history all go away. So it doesn't save any of that. So if you actually log in to somebody else's, if you're on somebody else's computer and they're using Chrome or something like that, you need to log in to your email, you can just open incognito, log in, do anything that you want to do, and you'll know that you're not going to leave your traces behind. Or as soon as you close that window, you're automatically going to be logged out. So you won't forget to be logged into your Facebook page or something like that. So it's just so I go to something like this for this example. I just went to this accounts page because if I went to this accounts page here, I'm already logged in. And so it will show me my account, right? And so I just used it as a way to, as a brand new user. And so
People are going to learn about Google and your web surfing.
Yes. Well, it was funny because I actually gave a workshop on PHP and MySQL, and I started using some tools inside of Chrome, and they're like, how do you do this? And then I went into this 30 minutes of why Chrome is a preferred browser, and I don't want to do that here. But so use whatever browser you want. Chrome is probably going to be your best bet, just because of not for usage here, but it's just a way more superior browser. But yes, if you have a website on campus that you want to see the analytics for, just email web@wayne. Welcome new people. I don't know. I think Jen said that you're students. Are you guys students? And where? What?
I'm
A dental student? Okay. And I'm sorry.
I used to finish my master's in education.
Okay. Okay. So you're just here to kind of learn about Google Analytics, right? You don't oversee any universities' websites, do you?
No.
Okay, cool. So a lot of the data that you'll see then is going to be about university websites, and which may be different than like if you were eventually going to work for a company and you're managing a company site or like your own personal site or something like that. The data is going to be a little skewed because we have a specific type of audience, and so but all the rest of the stuff will be the same. So once we give you access, you'll log into google.com/analytics. Once you get here, you'll get a list of all the sites that you have access to see the analytics for. So this is one piece of the puzzle that can get confusing, and that has changed over time. So Google Analytics now has essentially 3 layers of like websites or accounts, right? So let's go to admin. This shows it much better. So when you go into one of your accounts, you have this overarching kind of like account, which can be labeled the same. If you have a very simple website, all 3 of these are going to be the exact same, right? So this is like kind of an overarching account, which can have multiple properties in it. And these properties, at the end of the day, think of them as individual domains. So like this one is wayne.edu. This one actually encompasses like any subdomain that is within wayne.edu. Whereas some of these other ones, let's go back home here. So like let's take one that's like CFPCA. This one's a good one. So CFPCA is an overarching property, right? Or overarching account. And it has multiple properties in it. Each of these properties have their own domain, right? So art collection, com, dance, and then within each of those domains, you can set up views. This is important because, so for example, like most sites, if you just want to see all the traffic to it, it's just going to have one view. Whereas if you had a site like blogs.wayne.edu, which is one domain, it's one actual like property, but we want to see the data with different lenses. So we set up individual kind of views, which is just like engineering jobs or institute gerontology or like some of these specific blogs that they wanted to see just the traffic to those. And so I'll show you this one second. So let's go to admin, and you can set up, well, depending on if you're the account owner or not. I think that you might, if you're the account owner, you get to see all of this. If you just have access to one property, you'll see the property plus any of the views. So if you have access to a property, most of the time when we give you access, we're going to give you access to the property. Or if like for CFPCA, we would give David access to all of the properties. And so this is interesting because you actually have settings for each of these, you have user management for each of these, and then a couple of different things inside here.
And I like that you can change. You might not have any properties, you might have limited, but you can have expanded
Views?
roles, like edit in that in the view section.
Yes. Yeah, so so these actual properties is where you could go into like user management. I'm not going to go into that right this second, but the important thing here is once a property is set up, this is pretty much set up. It's going to give you, by default, these older ones actually just give us like, it's by domain, but all of them now say all, let's go to like, this creative one just got set up, right? So you name it, that's not the domain, and then by default, it's going to say all website data. And that's a better definition of what the data is compared to like these, because blogs.wayne is the all website data, but then like engineering jobs only is just a view into this property. And what that means is by default, it's going to give you all the same information. As soon as you set up a view, it's going to give you the same information as the main like all property. What the views allow you to do is set up these filters. So filters are specific things just for this one view that, let's go into this engineering jobs only. This engineering jobs only says, and you can set up as many filters on one view as you want. This one, we just create a label, and then you can use one of these predefined filters, which is like exclude or include traffic, from a specific ISP or IP or subdomain or specific host name that begins with, equals, or contains some sort of string, and you can choose if it's case sensitive or not. So what this essentially does is it takes all of the traffic coming into blogs.wayne.edu. If the traffic from this subdirectory matches, that begins with this subdirectory, if it matches this, it's only going to include that information into this one view. So when you go in to look at this reporting of this individual view, all of the data and all of the interface here is just going to be for engineering, like blogs.wayne.edu/engineering jobs. So this is kind of like a views.
Are you defining that view, or is Google
We
defining it?
typically define those views, but you're free to define them if you want. The most common ones that we do are for higher ed specifically, right? It is internal and external only. So we have like an all data, and then we just want to see like, all right, so how much of that traffic is from off campus, and how much of that traffic really is from in campus. This can give us a big understanding of how people use a website differently. Often students are on campus. So like for student-facing schools and colleges, this isn't all that that useful, but it can give us some insight with a grain of salt of like, all right, so internal people are spending twice as much time on the site than external people, right? Because if you just had this general average, you might not be able to tease out that information. So within this internal and external, you can tease out certain pieces of information which are useful. Other times, it might not be all that useful. This blog actually gets a lot of traffic. So that's kind of the way that the three-tiered property kind of structure is set up. There is a limit to the number of accounts that a specific email, like Google account can have. It used to be 25. I think they upped it to 40 now. So we're definitely at our max of accounts, and this is for various reasons. Number one is we used to handle analytics differently, and since we're a central unit that has taken ownership of a lot of sites around campus who had existing analytics accounts, we just they added our main account to all of those existing accounts, and so we just have accumulated all those accounts into one, and we keep. What's nice about that is that we're able to keep those historical records of those of the analytics, but at the same time, we can have the new accounts combine them all. And most of your sites will all have multiple. So let's go to this creative. I'm gonna show off David's new site, creative.wayne.edu. So most sites, if you go and you right-click anywhere on the page and you go to View Source, this is how you can tell if analytics is installed or not. You'll see either someplace up at the top or all the way at the bottom, depending on when the script was added, this script tag, and then you'll see these things here. If it might not say Google Analytics, this one's googleanalytics.com, and you'll see these UA dash and then some numbers. So most all of our sites are tracking multiple accounts because we have a CFPCA creative specific and then a all Wayne State specific. So we both track analytics from the per site perspective, plus we have an all-encompassing account that we can track visitors across websites because each one of these properties inside of here are technically, each one of these folders, I guess, like this one, for example. So imagine all these as individual sites, right? If a user starts on art and then they jump to art collection and then go back to art and then go to com, technically they're separate users using each one of those sites independently. Google, unless you have one of those overarching accounts, you're not going to see that user and or that session go between these accounts. So it's just a little bit of context. We try to have, so like actually on David, we should probably be doing one more of these where it's an all CFPCA account too. So that way you can see visitors that go in between all of the CFPCA domains, which
Do they count them as unique visitors then, or do they duplicate it if you're creating multiple domains? How does that track out?
depends what view you're in. So if you're in the all view,
Yeah.
they would count as one session across all of them. If you're just in the CFPCA or just in the theater view, they would be counted as soon as they hit a theater.wan domain, they're counted as, say, new. Whereas if they came from CFPCA.wan to theater, over to com, back to theater, back to CFPCA, they would still be considered the same visitor, even if that took 15 minutes for them to get back to CFPCA. You're still following them along their path on there's a Google account attached to them. So that's kind of the deal with these. And so a lot of the accounts are set up okay. They could definitely be set up better. So take a look at your accounts now that that might have been new information to you. And if you're thinking that you might want to track people a little bit differently, we can definitely set it up that way for you to be able to do that. I know for educational outreach, actually, you're in the same boat. You got a lot of sites, and they all kind of are connected, and so it'd be good to have an overarching one. While at the same time, for like ELI, you might, I don't know if this goes into education outreach anymore or not. And so some of these may not be in the right overarching account anymore, but we can't move them. So too bad. You're gonna.
Could ELI be moved to international programs?
No, it can't. So it can't. It has to stay here. So as soon as you move it, this account code gets changed or is a new account code, and then essentially all of the data going into this account stops and the other one starts. So you could, you'd have that break in historical data.
Yeah.
So it's, you got to just make that decision. Okay, so I'm just going to use this all Wayne State account just because there's a lot of information in it right now and to kind of go through the interface and pick out some interesting stuff. So once you get into the account that you want to look to get some information out of, by default, actually you might be able to change this. Most of all of our accounts do start on this audience overview. Then you have this, we'll go through this and we'll talk about options with that. There's this dashboards area, which allows you to kind of create these little widgets and put them in different areas and set up different dashboards to be able to get specific information. I think as we go through this interface, maybe we'll create a dashboard for one of these so that way you can see how to do that and what information might be useful there. Shortcuts, you can jump right to specific information. I've never actually found that useful because if there's anything that you want to see, you can easily visitor, you can just start typing it here and it gets right there. Plus this is not all that big of a menu. Intelligent events are things that Google will both set up for you from an automated perspective. So it's watching your analytics and it will start kind of notice if something changes. So for example, we have a goal here for RSVP from a homepage event. And so it noticed that the change, there was a change of over 500% in a daily rate. So it might have been that we added an event. So this is a goal, and we'll talk about these goals in a second. So this one specifically is somebody went to wayne.edu, they clicked on an event, got to our events calendar, and then clicked the RSVP button and actually RSVP'd. So we want to know how effective, so from Wayne.edu perspective, we want to know how effective are, publishing events on Wayne.edu. Does it not just do people click through to get the information, but can we get them to sign up? Because that's the ultimate goal of them being there, right? Is if there's an RSVP, we want somebody to attend. And so it looks like maybe this one, this one's coming up, or maybe we added another one here that has an RSVP that wasn't up there before. So something happened in the last day that caused an over 500% than normal change in this. And you can go to these details and actually it'll give you this. What's nice about these intelligent events is Google does these automatically for you. Like it just watches your data and tells you, hey, you might want to pay attention to this. So this is a good spot to look like on a daily basis or however often you come into analytics to see if there's anything interesting here. You can also set up like I think custom alerts allows you to do multiple things. So like if something interesting does happen, you can say, let's go to manage custom alerts, new alert. So you'll see that a lot of the interface of like reading stuff happens in the reporting area, and a lot of the, if you need to like create something, it happens in this admin area. And sometimes you'll be bounced back and forth, and then you can always within the account, it kind of gives you an overview here of where you're at with this like breadcrumb deal. But you can always just hit back on this reporting here, and I think if you go back to admin, okay, actually it doesn't give you back to where you were. So I thought it actually gave, like you were able to like toggle back and forth. So you can set up a custom alert to, let's go to new alerts.
And the alerts cluster reminders. For example, if you have an event and you have to send a reminder. the day
This will
before,
not
same day.
do that. So these alerts are specifically for Google Analytics telling you about something in particular about the data, not necessarily like a remind me or remind these people when some sort of event is about to happen that they've RSVP'd for, right? Because that would be on the business logic of the website, right? All that Google will alert you of is the business logic of like the data coming in about your website. So the traffic patterns and things like that. So it's like this page is getting all of a sudden a high amount of visits, or a lot of social traffic is going to this individual page. So there's something that looks out of the ordinary.
Yeah, because I noticed that the Wednesday when they had some kind of event, they always send another like reminder. And today I didn't receive any. That's why. I was like,
Oh, for this? Oh, I'm sorry. That was my fault. I'm sorry. Like that was completely my fault, and I was kind of using Carolyn as an as the communicator for this, which I should have taken better ownership of that, especially since a few people didn't know where it was.
No,
Carolyn.
I didn't want to point it out that way. You know, my question is that they do it automatically, or you actually have to send the reminders by hand, or it is another program?
It depends on who's running the event and or
They have different programs.
they have different programs.
Ah,
So
okay,
some areas on campus, like if they're a special event, they'll manually send out the reminder, right? Whereas if it is a more recruitment intensive event that that is run through a unit that uses a system that can manage that, they use it like a CRM system that allows for triggered messages. So like 24 hours before X, send out to this audience and whatever. Not all areas on campus are using something like that. So, so for example, let's go to alert name, applies to all website data, and okay, so send me an email when this is triggered. So yeah, this is a little bit of setup. But actually what's nice is that you can have it alert an email that's not your like Google account, right? So if you wanted this to go to like, so like for PR, like media at Wayne.edu, say that's the whole like PR team, you know, that you don't want them to have access to the Google Analytics, but you want them to be alerted about something, you could do that within here. So like, let's do that. Let's say like big press release traffic. And then you can set the conditions of the alert. What I want to figure out here is, okay, so all traffic, alert me when. So this is where they've changed this. There used to be like this intelligence.
You could set it up too and sending on a weekly basis or something like that. I used to
Yes.
do that to admissions.
These are all the goals. E-commerce. So let's. Okay, so I guess I was just going to. Clicks, impressions. Alright, so I guess I don't have a good example for this. Because, let's schedule the emails. Oh, I've scheduled it too, okay. Because I thought that intelligent reports, yeah, like there's this create a custom alert. There is a way, and I'll find it, to get alerts whenever one of these things comes up. But that being said, today we're going to look through a bunch of actual analytics and we're going to get some information out of it. We're not going to come away, like even if we looked at one site, we're not going to come away with a ton of useful information. We'll probably come away with like one or two tidbits of information. The best way to get information about your sites and how well you're doing on your sites is to look at the analytics on a routine basis, because there's going to be things about your site that are going to be completely unique only to your site, right? That like CFPCA is going to have a completely different audience than law school, right? The patterns of what the students are looking for, or faculty or staff are looking for, and the amount of time they spend on the site, what they actually do, are going to be completely different. And so the only way to kind of know when something interesting is happening is to look at or to have a routine where you are getting analytic data and then you can notice an anomaly or notice something interesting within your own data set. And so we can kind of, I'll show you how to set up like those weekly alerts. I thought I was going to do one for this intelligent, but I guess not. I'll have to figure that out, how to get an alert from these intelligent reports. So intelligent events are ones that Google automatically sets up for you and discovers for you. We'll talk about goals in a second. Going down the list here, we have real time. So real time is literally how many people are on your site at this absolute second. And it'll show you like per second how many increases you're having, and then per minute how many actual like page views are coming in. So that'll tell you also active pages, refers, social traffic, keywords, and a map of where they're at. You can dive into this data by like going into like say locations, and as you click on stuff within live, so like United States, you'll notice up top here it says like country, United States. Well, now as you move in between like say traffic sources, this filter stays up here. So these traffic sources are now only within the United States. And if you wanted to say, oh, well, only United States that are has Google as a source, it's not only going to show you that, what page you're on, but as you go in between these other areas, this filter is going to stay here. And you'll see that, all right, well, now we have 13 people on the site that are from the US that came in from Google, that are on the site right now. These are the pages that they're at the second, or you can go back to this like page views in the last 30 minutes. This could be useful because sometimes there's only one person on a page at the moment, but in the last 30 minutes, this this SAP success, writing a successful SAP page has been popular. At the second, it might not be all that popular, but in the last 30 minutes, you can see. And then you can clear out all of these by clicking clear or clicking on like individual entries to get specific filters out of this live view. This live view can be interesting, but it may not always be that useful because unless you're having something specific go on, like we embed live events on wayne.edu/live, so we try to see like, well, how many people are literally on that page at this second? Because if you go through the rest of your analytics here, that has a time period, right? And even if you chose, I just want to see the traffic from today, starting and ending today, it'll still be an hour behind, no matter what. So it's always an hour behind. This real time is the only time to see within the past hour what's actually occurring. Yes.
So if I'm in my page or
Yes.
my site, and the analytics for my site, this real-time number is anyone on any site within the engineering.wayne.edu
Yes.
domain.
Yes. So this will be within whatever actually it's going to be whichever filter. So you have one property with technically two filters in it. So this real time will be all within engineering.wayne. But if we went to this engineering ACM filter, this would be all the people who are, actually, you know what? I might be wrong. Real time might not use filters. Or it might take a second to just correct itself.
And then, for example, you have an active user for right now, Wednesday, and sources, reference,
Right here?
and the bottom of the
The referring?
like here.
Yes.
Okay, when you have an active user, you have four. Can you see it individually or no? How much time they are spending on that website? You can see one by one, just by the ID code or no?
So Google Analytics as a tool will not show you an individual user, right? So what it's going to do is clump users together to find patterns, and we'll see in a second. But you cannot track an individual user and their kind of experience through the site. There are other tools to do that. Google kind of like consolidates them all into one. So like these 5 users that are active from Wayne.edu, there's no way for you to say like each one of these 5, what pages are those 5 on, unless you specifically put a filter like that on there. But even then, like, you're not really going to get that user as an individual. You're just going to kind of get them as as part of another group. So there's another tool that we have used in the past, and we do use we've kind of used more or less on the admissions area, is called Woopra. And it's a real-time analytics tool. It's purely real-time analytics, but it treats every visitor as like an individual. So if you visited the site and you're the first visitor, you're number 1. If I visited, I'm 2. If you leave and come back in a month, you're still visitor 1, because that ID is now stuck to you, and I'm always visitor 2. And then you can always see that individual's browsing history and what they clicked on, what they searched for, everything as an individual. Google doesn't show you that lens.
And can Woopra be like for any engine? Or does it have to be specific with Wayne?
No, so Woopra can be used on any website. It's the same as, so Google Analytics is it requires JavaScript for the user to be tracked. Woopra is the same way. So as long as the user has JavaScript, doesn't matter who created the site or what it was created in, as long as that JavaScript tag is on the page, the user will get tracked. The other thing, Google Analytics does have a non-JavaScript version, but we don't use it here. So real time shows, obviously the number of people. Like if you're on locations, like there's 13% of people, well, 1 of the real-time people on the engineering site are from India. Traffic sources being mainly a referral from Wayne.edu, or direct means that they typed it in, or organic means that they typed in a search of their own from Google. We'll go through those terms in a second. Content's going to be like what page they're on. And events, some of your sites will have events. So Google Analytics events are things that are happening on the page that may not be page views. So we track events for like clicking on like buttons sometimes, clicking on promotional items, things that are on the page and they are interactive. They have some sort of interaction, but they're not actually like, they may not be a full page view, or we want to categorize them in a certain way. So sometimes, like on engineering, for example's homepage, like we want to know how many people actually click on this link compared to this link to get to the same story. We can, with JavaScript, we can add that on-click action to say, here's an event. A user has clicked on a link, and it is this celebrating student success, and then this is a user clicked on a link, and it was read more. And so we can see the comparison of, even though this results in the end the same ending page, and we can see how much traffic this page gets, we can discern how useful each one of those things are. And so some people, it's gotten us to be able to use the term read more less, because what we found, read more and click here, we found that people are more apt to clicking on a title if they know it's a link than read more or click here, because they know, people know how to click on link. They know that this is going to go someplace, right? And so the read more or click here it's just kind of like, it doesn't have you have to read the context around it in order to figure out where that thing is going to go.
And then read more, it is for powerful, the yes, click and those. Because you know the tags, you know that.
So sometimes, it depends. It depends how it's positioned, right? And so if it's positioned like as a whole bunch of stuff and then there's a button to read more, that might, that button might be an anchor to an overarching thing, which if you were to replace that with the full title, it might look confusing. And so it might look overwhelming and it might get less click-throughs, whereas sometimes a button with read more does actually get more click-throughs, but having it on everything as the primary way to get someplace may not be the right way. So every one of those situations, like I said, is unique, right? It all depends on how it's visually designed, it depends on the content, it depends on who the users are who are going to be interacting with that content. So the only way to know for sure is to test it. And so that's one way to test it. And we'll go through a couple other ways to test too. There's also this conversions area. And so it'll list out any of the goals that you have set up inside of analytics, and it will show you in real time how many people are converting into those goals. And I'll talk about goals in a second.
This would be helpful to do live, I'm sorry to interrupt, if we were doing like a webinar, let's say.
Definitely.
And we say, okay, everybody, you can apply now or whatever, and we want to see if people are following our traffic.
Yes. So if you're doing a webinar, this would be a great screen to show. And then what would be also really great is if that webinar had the ability to send out live, so if there's a chat room with it, right? And you could pass links into that chat room that then people could click on. They didn't have to retype, right? You could, however, you could send out specific, go.wayne.edu/something, or, it could be vague, or it could be more, if they can click on it and they don't have to retype it in, it could be a longer URL. But that URL could have campaign codes or some sort of specific information on it that when you're looking at inside of here, this traffic sources, you can see that campaign as that's where this traffic is coming in from, and you could just change the lens of real time to just the people who have clicked on that link from your chat room during the live chat, and what are they doing right now? And that would give you a whole bunch of insight. And so this, we can go to this all Wayne State traffic, and we go to this events. So we have 2 events that may cross all of your websites, and they're an error event. And this is whenever we have a 500 page error or 404, we track them all inside of Google Analytics with the actual what page it was and the refer. This might not give you all of the information, but we're tracking it on our side. And so this is interesting. So it will tell us some information here. So you might see error events inside of yours, or you might see for me events. So we also track across all of the web. So this might show up on your accounts. If you see for me inside of there, anytime somebody submits a form, we pass in what that form dash, and this is the ID of that form, right? So if you have multiple forms on your site, you might see actual events in your listing, both real time and in the full reports of how many people filled out what forms.
And then when you are in a webinar and they have any technical difficulties, it means that it's not actually the program, it is the internet speed or something like that.
So if there's, wait, what was that question again? If they're during a webinar and
If they have some technical difficulties, it's not about the program, it's about the internet speed.
maybe. So yeah, it depends on what those technical difficulties are on that user end.
They say there is certain time and sometimes. I know.
Yeah. Okay, so beyond real time, all of this kind of has its own kind of unique way about its interface. The rest of this, audience, acquisition, behavior, and conversions, all have the same kind of top half to this interface. And this interface basically starts with a date range. By default, it's going to do the last 30 days, and it won't include today. So if you want today's traffic in there, you have to go back into here, go to like, today's the whatever. So you could have to like chop off a day and then add another day to keep a 30-day range. Otherwise, you can just keep the same original day and end with today. They don't by default add today because it's going to be incomplete data. So if you look at this, you'll notice today's little like graph. It's kind of halfway through the day, so it's up here. It'll probably be a dived all the way down to the bottom where if it's in the morning and stuff. So if you want to look at specific data, always look at try to exclude today. The other thing that you can do within this date range is compare it to a previous period. So within higher ed specifically, this is important to make sure that you understand what previous period you're comparing data to. Because in higher ed, everything is like cyclical, right? We have 3 semesters, which have kind of rough dates to them, right? So things happen at the beginning of the semester. That's going to happen at 2 other times during the year, right? And then towards the middle of the semester, stuff that happens in the middle will happen 2 other times of the year, but that might be unique to just the middle times of the semesters. Those are the only times that people are going to like, supplemental instruction, looking for different tutoring and stuff like that. Whereas in the beginning and the end, those pages might not get all that much traffic. And so if you're comparing a specific thing during a specific time of year, you can either do previous year, which gives you this same time period a year ago, which likely it'll be about the same, right? So students will be in the same mindset. What you're gonna probably have to do, and this is another thing that's unique to higher ed, is that the weekends are always a dive in traffic. So as you can see, like a year ago, we were kind of like a day off from the week. So what you might want to do is down here, change this to be, instead of being starting on the 20, which one is a year ago? So instead of starting on the 25th, we're going to start on the 26th, right? And then go through the 25th. So that way, when we apply this, hopefully I did it in the right direction, our Mondays line up and our Tuesdays line up. So that way we're actually comparing apples to apples, because what happens on Mondays per week, happens on Mondays per week. And so for this example here, just the overall traffic to the engineering site has gone up 26% year over year. There are 25% more users and 13% more page views. The pages per session have gone down. So we'll go through these right now. All of this information, Google does change over time. They just actually changed from visits to sessions. And the definition of sessions, if you scroll over these things, they kind of now have made it smart because they're changing these, right? So a session is the period of time that a user is actively engaged with your website, app, or whatever. And so it can be both views, events, any type of things that they're interacting with your site. So not everything inside of here is a page view. It could be an event or something else like that, which you will discover. So this is a single session is from the time that they've started interacting with your site to the time that they have stopped interacting with your site, and they're off on some other domain. That's why it's important that these accounts are set up with the right lens, because if you're just looking at engineering.wayne.edu, they have one single domain for all of their sites, all of their departments, everything. Whereas CFPCA, this session, like if you're looking at just art, it's only going to be their time on art.wayne.edu, but it doesn't count the time that they came from CFPCA.wayne, they went to art, and then they went to, say, maybe they're looking at, a comm or, some other degree, and then they came back to CFPCA and then to art. Doesn't include that. Users users are, I think, is what Google is now redefining as, so they used to be called like visitors, and now they're called users, because they're trying, and I don't know to what level they have done this yet, but they're trying to start mashing up, and there's been, both Google has done a study and Facebook has done a study, that most people will start something on one device and finish it on something else, right? So you might start researching schools on your laptop, but then you're sitting down watching TV and there's a commercial on, you pull out your phone and you pick up where you left off, right? Or you're looking at a product on your computer and then you add it to your, for Amazon, you add it to your wish list or shopping cart and you finish that like when you're at home on your iPad or something. So Google has started they're moving towards making sure that a user could potentially be the same person between multiple devices. So that way they're not tracked as individuals, they're tracked as a single person. They're doing that through a whole bunch of crazy data-ness that I don't understand. It's not of our concern, other than unless you want to opt out of that, and then there are plenty of ways to do that. But at the end of the day, you can't opt out of all tracking. Page views are the individual number of pages that a visitor has visited on your site. Pages per session basically takes this and divides it by the session for whatever your range is, and it will give you how many actual pages on average this set of visitors visited during a specific session. It's not that cut and dry of math. It actually takes into account every single one of those sessions. The average session duration is the amount of time. So actually you're seeing percentages up top here, but below, because since we're doing a comparison, will be the before and then the after. So this is going to be a year ago, and this is going to be, actually, you know what, the first number is going to be current versus a year ago. So these few have gone down. The average duration of time a user has spent visiting the site. The bounce rate has gone up. And bounce rate is, let me scroll over this. So bounce rate is when somebody comes from an outside site. So they came from, say, Wayne.edu. They went to, or say they came from, let's take outside of Wayne.edu, for example. So they came from some sort of the Free Press website, right? They went to engineering.wayne to view a news article, and then they either closed their browser window or hit back, or they clicked on a link within that article, and that article then went out to another site, like some sort, like YouTube or whatever, right? And so that visitor went from some external site to engineering to then off to some other site or back to the Free Press site. That's called a bounce. So they visited one site or one page on your site, they went there and they went off. And then number of new sessions, which essentially is like new visitors, right? So that would be the number of actual returning versus new visitors during this duration of time. So if somebody hits, on the first of the, or on the June 25th, somebody who may have been to the site before, on the 25th that they come to the site, they will be actually, I have to clarify that. New, yeah, first time versus new visit. So yeah, so this new visitors will mean that let's go over this. I'm pretty sure that new visitors means that during this time period, and I will clarify this, that the first time a visitor comes to that page, they're a new visitor during this time period. And then there's also a term of a first-time visitor, which means during the entire period, this is their first time on the visit. Yeah, so this is first-time visitors. Okay.
So, Nick, when we look at these comparisons, what would you say is a measure of that we should deem significant and change?
So the question of what is significant here, because these numbers themselves are insignificant by themselves. The only time that these numbers are significant is when you're looking at this data consistently, right? Many times, because you're kind of understanding what your site is and what's available to them and stuff like that, right? So that you have an idea of what is normal, because right now normal is nothing, right? So if we went to this and did this comparison again in a week, then we would be able to see, does this fluctuate a lot? Does this not fluctuate a lot? And if there's a change by, say, a couple percentages, what is that change and why? That's the data that's actually interesting, because the number of sessions, yeah, just because more traffic is going to your site doesn't mean they're all that useful. Because but for example, on Wayne.edu, the homepage, right? The more traffic to the site doesn't really mean anything, right? Because it doesn't matter if there's more traffic there. On old Wayne.edu, all that used to be was a container that linked off to other websites. It linked off to schools and colleges. It linked off to the PR site for news. It linked off the events calendar for that. So our main goal was to make Wayne.edu have a really high bounce rate, because we wanted people to get there and go off to someplace else as quickly as possible. We wanted them to spend as little time there as possible. Whereas now new Wayne.edu, it has a lot more content inside of Wayne.edu proper. We want people to explore that more. We want time on site to be longer. We want the links to be more towards internal links, because then it's more within the university brand and stuff like that, and within a consistent flow. So every site's going to be different. So engineering homepage, this for an entire site probably isn't going to mean much. But the new versus returning visitors might be useful too. Might be useful overall, so you can see over time the trend of new versus returning.
What you are trying to say is that time is the most important time that you are spending and what kind of information you are looking for, like the Google search when you are Googling something, and sometimes Google, they don't have the answer, but they capture that question, and later on they come up with, you don't have an idea, but they have to wait like 1 week, 2 weeks. I read something about that, but they actually keep in mind, what you are asking, and how they can develop the next step is what you are trying to say, right? It doesn't matter how many percent of people there are there, it's how much time they spend looking for this information, and if the information is actually helpful.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah.
One thing though, visibility. If we, back to your point, Amy, as an office, if we hire a client, our goal is to increase visibility and interactions. So driving more people to the site is a really good thing. So I think if you're looking at the data overall, how many sessions and users are we getting? And then I really look at from our standpoint of increasing the visibility of the university, are we getting new visitors? So when I look at it from an ad standpoint, I think when I look at those elements.
Yeah. So yeah, from a visibility standpoint, if you're just concerned with getting more eyes on our word mark and or our names and or our impression, Yes, definitely. Like number of users and visits and visit duration are very important. But if your goal is to get people signed up for a information session or to get them to click a request information button or whatever, like that should be set up as a goal, and that's the number you should be tracking to be able to increase that number incrementally. I don't know what this active users is. Day active users.
Would it be fair to say that in that previous view, the fact that pages per session went down 10% might suggest, might reflect efforts to improve the digestibility and the reduce the number of clicks or drill down levels that visitors have to go into?
Totally. So yeah, if like something like that, like pages per session has gone down this significant, like 10% is a pretty large amount, right?
Which
Especially
might
when you're
suggest they're getting to what they need to know quicker with fewer individual different pages they've had to click on to try to find the answers.
Yes. And so that is something that only the person managing the site would know, right? Would know, did we reconstruct something or did we rechange something on the site that could have impacted one of these
And if
numbers?
the answer to that is yes, then this might show that you were successful to some extent in doing that change.
Exactly. And so as somebody who manages a site, I know Carolyn uses this, is on this kind of date path thing here, there's a little drop down and you can add annotations. And so you can click on this and choose a specific date and make a note. Hi. Are you here for the analytics? Okay. No problem. We're just kind of going through the interface at the moment. And then you can make a note. So on this day we changed X, or on this day we changed this, or this ad dropped on this day, or whatever. Those can be private or shared, and then they kind of show up along the bottom here. So you can see like, well, what happened on this day right here, right? Like, was there something going on that like last year there was this pretty significant drop in traffic? If you had the annotations in, they carry across all of the timelines. So if you put something in for a specific date, whenever you see that date, that annotation will come up. I don't know if Carolyn, you've been doing that or not recently. All right, so this we'll go through the rest of these in 1 second. So going down the interface, right? This has the ability to take whatever's on the screen at the moment and email it. So you can email it to, it's going to be from whoever your account is, to whatever email address as like a CSV or an Excel or a PDF. PDF is probably what most people want because it gives you all the graphs and stuff. And then you can also do it like the frequency just right now, or you can do it daily, monthly, whatever. And I think there's a bunch of other, options, or like you can do it for a certain amount of time. And so this way you can send somebody a specific report if you want it, or you could send yourself a specific report. You could also export this live right now, so you don't have to email it to yourself. So the same data, but just live right now. Or you can add this specific screen and stuff to the dashboard, and we'll talk about that in a minute once we go through more of these. Or I think you can make a shortcut to that with these little shortcut things. And so this will keep all your configuration things here. So I don't know if this does like the custom dates. I have not done a shortcut with custom dates, if it keeps those custom dates or not, or if it does them relative. But that would be something to figure out. Then below that, so right now, I'm going to get off of this comparative view for a second because that'll just be super confusing. And below that, there's this area about segments. Okay, so segments are the ability to take the idea of filtered data, but mash them up live right on screen. So with the 3-tier kind of admin view, right, where you have a property and you have this specific views of like internal and external filters, right, that when you apply one of these filters to one of these views, it happens at this minute and only records that data from now on. Segments allow you to take a lens of data, like a filter, and apply that to not only the data from, say, now on, but also retroactively forever. So right now we just have one up, which is all sessions. We can add another one. I don't know how many you can add at a time, but there is a whole bunch that are already in here. And let's go to like system. So like say mobile traffic, or we'll do mobile and tablet. All right. So what this is going to do is going to give us on that graph and on the data below a lens for all of the sessions within this time period, plus all of the mobile and tablet traffic. There's a whole bunch built in, and there's a whole bunch in this like gallery that you can do, and I'll show you how to make one in a second. So once you apply one of these ones, it gives you that data in comparison to each other. So you can see this, within the same time period, different aspects of your site. And this goes retroactively, like as far back as you wanted, right? You could go a whole couple of months and stuff. And this segment will be there, like it'll still kind of manage that data. You can see that this is actually overall within here, it's 18% of all of the traffic. You can add another one of these, and so for example, like say we want to add a segment, we can name it, and these will, what's interesting about segments is that they're, oh here it is, visibility. That you can create them and then they're visible in any of your accounts. Or you can just have them part of just one of your accounts. So if it really is only like something that is part of engineering, we just want this to show up here. Otherwise, your list of potential segments are going to get insane. So you can see, we're going to skip demographics for 2 seconds. I'll explain that in a second. So you could see, I want to see, in comparison to all the traffic of our engineering site, to also see that the days since the last session. So say like, I want to see somebody who hasn't been here, who has come back, who hasn't been here for a week, say 7 days, right? So there's been more than 7 days since the last time that they were here. I want to see what the comparison between people who come here not only just more than once, but frequently compared to the people who might just come here once a week. And so if we save this, specify name, hasn't been to the site in, or we'll do 7 days. There's also like, you want to see specific like, and they started that their first session on the site was between these 2 days, or it could be the same days, or like is on this day. So say you were doing a webinar, right? And you wanted to see if the first time that they viewed was on this day. I want to see, have they ever come back? And you would be able to kind of tease that data out of here, even if you didn't set up that filter beforehand. You could do it live. So if we save this, it's going to load. It's going to take a second. Sometimes if you have a lot of data, it does take a second. And sometimes it will tell you that like this is a sample, like this data is coming from a sample of all of your data. So it's going to be, it may not be every single record, but it's going to give you pretty good information. So let's take off this mobile.
It's interesting though how the mobile and tablet isn't so governed by the weekend and weekday.
Yeah, it isn't.
Weekend, weekday.
Actually, let's go back to that to see that. System.
You know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
pretty much level.
Which is interesting. So
Yeah,
like
it's
then
fun.
you have to deduce like what does that mean, right? So does that mean that mobile and tablet traffic are so that's when you'd have to look from an internal versus external view. Like maybe the mobile and tablets are primarily external traffic. People from off campus who have who aren't like a regular staff member or faculty member who are going to the site over and over again, which these, upticks can, that's going to be their homepage, and that's going to, and that's going to
Or maybe
to
it also
affect that.
suggests that those mobile devices are not weekday to weekend determined. Like,
Yeah.
I use my mobile device at all kinds of
The
hours
same-
of every single day.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's Saturday versus Wednesday.
Yeah, that could totally mean the same thing. So if you don't see any discrepancies in the internal versus external, that's more than likely the case. Is that people use use primarily a desktop computer during the week, and it's because that's when they're like have a structured, time to be at one. Whereas their mobile device, they could use at any time.
And then you can actually marketing, which one is target is more of the market, the tablets and the iPhones or regular phones, and instead, like you said, like the desktop. And people, they don't actually wait to get into their houses and their workplace, they do it everywhere. They use the internet.
Yeah, and so that's pretty good. I would say pretty good. That's if that is the case, if that people will use their mobile device at any time, anywhere. You could then start using that data to influence when you're sending, say, prospect emails, right? Because most people open their emails on their phones, and so does it really matter? And then you're going to have to start thinking about, all right, well, it doesn't have to be on a weekday. It could be on a weekend because they're just as likely to have their mobile device on them or whatever. Then you have to see, all right, Noah, if we do a test on a weekday and do a test of an email on a weekend with the same group of people, does it get the same response rate? There's a lot more variables involved there. But you can communicate with people differently from a mobile perspective, with that, if that is the case. And so,
Or how fast internet do you actually have to be able to open the email?
true. Depends on what the needs of that email are. If it is to watch a video, it might be better on it's hard to tell because mobile devices can be on Wi-Fi or not. So this is people who haven't been here in 7 days. What's nice about this lens is that now, as you go through here, you can. So I skipped over demographics because demographics isn't enabled on every account. It's probably enabled on engineering because we specifically did it. So demographic data has to be enabled by us, and it has to be because there is a specific thing you have to put on your website to tell people that we're collecting demographic information. On our normal privacy policy, like privacy policy for the university, it says that we're collecting like general information about you as a visitor to our website, like the server just does it and you're kind of giving that up. Google requires that if you want to pull demographic information that you have a specific thing that's saying that you're recording demographic information. So we try to put that on the site. I think Kristen did that before you were here, Melissa.
So how,
I don't know where that's at on your site, but I know she put it on
I
there.
never do that. So how would something like that look? Like, would it be like
They have like a line. So like I'm not gonna pull it up in a second, but whenever you go to add it to your analytics account, it's like you need to like adhere to this policy. Like these are the words you need to have on your site. And so
And how trustworthy is the information that we're pulling on demographics? Like how
it's I would take it with a grain of salt. So like they're gonna be doing their best guess, and I could probably send you to an article. It's not 100% for sure, but because Google has a lot of knowledge about your browsing patterns, because Google Analytics is installed almost on every site out there. They know that how you they can make a profile of you just by your browsing patterns.
We found the trends to be consistent, but we've seen some of the stuff where it comes up like wherever the location data is, like some of it's off, but some of it's stuff that comes up like in areas that we're not marketing to, we're not using expectations, but there's something up. So that's been a little off, but I think
There's also this little like hat right here. So this is like so it used to be called like Analytics University, but now they call it just like Analytics Education. And so there's a whole bunch of like, depending on what page you're in, they have these little like videos which kind of explain little pieces of that stuff. And then there's actually like a Google Analytics certification course that you could go through. It's free, and like it does have it's like super in depth. I have not gone through all of it, so I am not a certified Google instructor, but I've heard that it's really good insight. I feel like that if you use it every day, there's not much value in going through it, but if you don't use it every day, I think there is. So with these custom segments, right, you can then, and you can see here, it now splits or triplets every piece of these pages to show you the difference between the like the all sessions and hasn't been here in 7 days, right? So you can see like the difference between this one's like by location. Actually, this is probably not a good one. So let's go to like behavior, engagement. So this is probably a good one to see, like, and this is probably something that our filter is, or our segment is already telling us, right? That this is going to be the difference of how engaged our users are, right? So if they haven't been here in 7 days, obviously they're less engaged than someone who has been here, very often. But what we might find is that if you haven't been here and this is literally what you're going to have to like go through your page, like each of these reports and see that's unique to your site. This is how long someone has stayed on the site. So 0 to 10 seconds, obviously that's the biggest bucket. And then it kind of, for engineering, like it's either, so I always say this is like, these are people who know exactly what they want, they get in and they get out, right? And so those are the people who are like the biggest segment. But then it falls dramatically to the 11 to 30 seconds and then starts to climb back up after this, right? So it starts to climb back up and, well, these are about equal. So like up to a minute. So if they're not here for 10 seconds, they're probably staying more than a minute because these are so low and this is driven back up here. So if you kind of take out the users who know exactly what they want, people are staying quite a bit of time on the site. A minute is a long time to spend as a session. And then you can also look at page depth. So this might be interesting to see here. I was looking to see if any of the people who haven't been here in more than 7 days have beat out the people who like all the people. But it doesn't look like that's the case. This tells you how many pages during a session that visitor has visited. 20 plus, okay. So some of these people, these are like anybody who's like over 10 or 15, like these are the people who are like really shopping, right? So one of these lenses, actually let's change this one. So let's remove this and let's change this to be a new.
One thing I noticed about when you still hasn't been here in 7 days, in almost every measurable, it was about 1/4 to 1/3, the number of total sessions. So that therefore, since that pattern was pretty consistent across all the factors, would it be fair to say then that approximately 2/3 of engineering's web traffic visits more than visits multiple times per week,
or at least yeah,
right?
Yes, that's probably the case. All right, so where conditions? So in addition to like number of sessions and days since last sessions, there's also like these transactions and session durations. Oh, there we go. Per user is greater than. Yeah, so this is, say, somebody who is interacted more than. So this is like a very engaged user, let's say, has been on the site for more than, wait, what is this? see this is what's really vague. You don't know if this is in seconds or in minutes. Whatever. I'm not going to use this one right now. I have to like. So this is also, there are other things that you can do here is like data per session, traffic sources. So this is where you can have these campaigns, mediums, and sources or specific keywords. And those come from, are essentially like made up. So if you just Google Google campaign URL, or just like just go to like Google campaign. There's this first result always that's just like this URL builder. This allows you to like paste in a URL from your site, and then you can define a campaign source, medium, and name. And so, for example, like engineering's doing a live webinar, right? If you wanted to go to, and if we wanted to link them to like engineering.wayne.edu, and we wanted to have this campaign be part of like webinar series or something like that. And then we could do a source being, so this campaign, so like what this does is you're able to use a single URL like engineering, and then you make this kind of custom URL which tags anybody who visits with this custom URL with this specific piece of information. So even though we're sending them to the engineering homepage, which is very general, we can tag this user to say that they came in from this webinar series, right? And that the actual source was like, this would be like live, we could do like live chat inside of here, and then the source would be, this one you'd probably want to do the name, like the date of the event. So like July 4th, like 2014, whatever, right? So this allows you to say that this individual user came in from this webinar series via live chat, because we posted this URL in the live chat, right? And this is the date of that campaign. So we do this all the time with any link that we send out via social media, via ads, via any sort of like if it's sometimes on billboards or printed pieces and stuff like that, or emails, right? That are specific to a campaign and or like fall recruitment or I don't know what else. We got like open house stuff and stuff like that. So that way, all of the URLs have the same campaign name, but they might have different mediums, right? So one might be email, one might be billboard, and one might be postcard. And then the actual source is like what that actual thing was, right? This was like for like cold, like I don't know. This is like totally marketing terms. Like really cold prospects versus like somebody who's been to an event before or something like that. So that way they're all going to the same page, but the URLs are unique. So that way when you're looking at your analytics data here, you can just say, I want anybody who came in from a campaign that contains like so by default it does like emails, right? So this Helios newsletter, right? So I want to know how all the people who came in from Helios. Helios. You could also define it beyond that. You could also say a specific medium, a specific source. But then this way you can now look at all of these different areas with just like compared to all your traffic. You could also remove all your traffic too. So that way it's just Helios, people who came in from Helios, right? You want to see how many pages did they visit on the site, right? Where was their actual location? So if this goes out to alums, and this is an alums newsletter, like let's go in and see where are people like coming from. So we got some US, some Germany, some Australia. Within the US, if we dive in, it's also going to give us like the states, right? So we can see, of course, like, Michigan's very popular, California is the next popular, but changing the lens, so like I don't know when this last was sent out, right? So this could have been sent out in January or something. I didn't like that. Let's try this. This should give us a lot more data. So, okay, so 0.14% of all the traffic to the site came in from Helios. But this gives us a good idea of where these alums are. Like even if something from this might spark insight into who this audience is. New verse returning. All right, let's go back. Let's take off this Helios. I just used that as an example to explain this URL builder. When you submit it, it basically gives you the URL plus like all this extra stuff that explains it all. Explains this specific why somebody would be clicking on this specific URL or where they're coming from or whatever. This is not a very friendly URL. We can use go.wayne.edu to shorten this for Wayne State stuff. Otherwise, a lot of people take this long URL and just use like bit.ly and other URL shorteners and just will mask it. So they'll paste in the long URL here, and then they'll give you this crazy j.mp, some crazy thing. You can customize that to say like, July webinar or like ENG July webinar or something like that, and save that. And now this nice pretty URL, it's nice and short, but it's semi-custom and it doesn't right up front tell users we're going to be tracking you, right? So when they click on that, it's going to give them that fully expanded URL, and now they technically can't do anything about being tracked because now they're tracked. We've seen a lot of especially younger people, if they see tracking stuff on URLs, bit.ly they're totally comfortable with because social media, most URLs on social media are already masked or shortened by bit.ly, so they're totally cool on clicking those, which usually becomes like a security problem sometimes. But in general, they're pretty if they see tracking stuff on a URL, they'll chop it off before they If
someone who's not of that age range.
If someone sent you this URL that looked like this, say in an email, you'd be like, ugh,
That's tracking stuff? I wouldn't know.
yeah. So I've seen younger kids not just chop it off, just do this and go like that and get to the site because they're like I don't want this specific ad. They imagine that that's now because most higher ed, they're probably less likely to do it. They might just be in that mindset. But if you saw that to Amazon, right? Now, or to some sort of other site, somebody who knows that is happening or will think, oh, well, they're going to serve up now specific ads to me that are of whatever, All right, so let's go through these. We'll just back on all sessions. So we have the geo, which is not only languages, but also actual locations. I don't know why this is chopping off here. We'll figure that out in a second. So it's actual locations. Each one of these you can dive into a country, which then goes into each of its regions. If you can dive in more, you can. So the U.S. you could even go into, let's go back to all here. That little breadcrumb structure is kind of useful. U.S. you can go into a state, and then within a state you can even click in and see cities within that state. Obviously Detroit has the most, but then you can see resulting. Oh, you can also order all of these columns by different stuff. Behavior goes into new and returning. Let's go back to this last 30 days here. So this will give you a list of new visitors and stuff like that. So beyond this top area of this interface, you can also go to site usage, which kind of gives you a little bit different information here. And then you can also, if you have goals set up, you can also show the columns for each one of the goals within these lenses here. There's a limit to the number of goals. We'll get to goals in actually 2 minutes because we're almost there. Then you can also change, like, for all of these dots here, are they sessions or are they like specific pieces of information? So like average site duration doesn't change from weekdays to weekends like the actual sessions do, right? Or bounce rate, is it more likely that people are bouncing on the weekend or during the day or during the week, and stuff like that. You can change the lens of this view. And then if you're actually want to see, beyond days, you want to see if you're doing a long period of time, it might be useful to see weeks or months, right? Month in here is just going to give us one dot, and so it's not going to be that great. And then you can also see this little like dot graph thing, which is pretty cool to see change over time. So it gives you this like dot and or line kind of graph and or bar kind of graph. Well, the bar graph's kind of boring. But what this allows you to do is like these are returning visitors and these are new visitors. It starts in the beginning and you can kind of like play it. And it will give you like, it'll go through each day and it'll show you how it's changed. I don't know, this one's not giving us much here. Maybe let's do, oh, now it's bounce rate. Sessions. All right, I'm going to go to a different one to show you this. But these will move based on how the data is changing per day. I don't know why that's not moving, because these are obviously changing per day. Oh, that's goal set 1. That's a summary. Let's go back to here. And now we should be able to see. All right, well, I fail. I don't know what's going on there. In addition to the actual just overall overview, you get this primary information. You can then pass in a secondary lens inside of here. So for each new and returning, we want to also see their social source, right? So, well, that might actually not be one for new versus returning. Let's go to overview. All right, actually it's going to be better on this other page. So it allows you to actually take a secondary dimension and see the data within those lenses, and then you can also sort it differently. You can also search inside of here. This will get interesting once we get to the actual pages, and then you don't have to see everything in this kind of chart. You can also see it in that graph. You can see it in this type of graph. So for new versus returning, this is probably the best way to see, because you can actually see if it's more than or less than 50%. And so obviously there's more, not every site has more returning visitors than new visitors. It's going to be unique to every site. So frequency, this will give you how number of sessions within this period, this last 30-day time period. There's an engagement of number of seconds that the user is on the site. And so the more, like this, you can see the longer time that they're spending on the site, the actual more pages that they're viewing compared to, the short burst people who know exactly what they want. They're not viewing that many pages, and if they are, they're going through them very quickly. Technology goes into browsers and OSs, so you can see like what's your most popular browser, and then you can even click on each one and see like which versions of those browsers. That's weird. Chrome 1.5. Okay, so you can go back into. So this is sometimes really difficult in their interface. Is once you get into like here, how to get back. So you got to go to this like all and then browser. So you could also like quickly get to something else within that last one, or you can go back to all. That took me a minute to figure out because they used to have a different breadcrumb structure. This is a good one to see the primary dimension and then secondary dimension. So like the actual browser, if you wanted to see Oh, this gives you different stuff. So like app focused stuff. Their browser and like their screen resolution. So you can see what the most popular combination of browsers and screen resolutions are. And so Safari, like this is interesting. So Safari, thinking if you didn't see the screen resolution, right? Or you could have changed this to like operating system. You would have probably thought Safari on a desktop was the most popular Safari browser. But if you look at the resolution, this is a teeny resolution. So actually Safari Mobile is more popular than Safari Desktop from a Safari browser standpoint. So this is always interesting to see here. We'll get to the, so if you go to other than browser, you can go to OSs. So this is like iOS is going to be both tablet and this is where you're going to want to go to screen resolution.
Could these also work with apps? Like if you have the Chrome app, things like that, instead of using like, you know,
Yes.
in the browser?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, that's why Safari is like the default browser on iOS, right? So let's go to screen resolution again here. So this way you can see the difference between iOS on a like phone and iOS on a tablet, right? So you can see that iOS is popular. The phone is actually more popular than the tablet, just by a little bit. But that's always interesting to see with these multiple dimensions. Oopsie. So like, so like screen resolution. Okay, so let's go out of this. So network. This will be like what networks are popular from like a data standpoint. This doesn't actually do speed, but it'll probably get there. I think Google, number one, is already tracking how fast your pages load. And so the faster your pages load, the higher your page rank is. So if you have a really slow page, like you have a bunch of big images and stuff like that, Google is actually going to penalize you in a search engine perspective. And so I'm assuming that eventually they're going to add that data into analytics. Right now they don't actually have it out here. So this is where you can also see a nice pie chart, right, of desktop, mobile, and tablet. And this also changes. This is another one that changes a lot for when you're viewing internal versus external traffic on your site. External has far more mobile views than internal. Then you can actually go back to devices to see which devices are going to your site. Not all of them are set. And I don't think we do very many custom variables for any sites. These are things that mainly are on wayne.edu and m.wayne.edu because we're most of the mobile app is Wayne State's mobile app is pulling in m.wayne.edu. So we set a variable to know that people are from the app compared to going to m. in a browser. This one is also really interesting, users flow. So this will tell you from whatever segments that you want to show here. So say a user comes in from, so their actual acquisition is, oh no, so we're not going to do it on those. Say we'll do social. So you want to see, say, the difference between somebody who, like, what's the difference between how somebody comes in from like a social, like so Facebook, for example, where do they go for just in general? Because we're doing all traffic here. We can see, well, most of them come into either the homepage or this ET or ISE or one of these other pages, but these are the three most popular. And then where do they do from there? This actually is pretty good from a user's. Which one do I usually do on here? Source. All right, so if they came in from Google, you can highlight this route to see like where are people going. So a lot of them are going to the homepage. A lot of them people are viewing a profile. And then from the profile, you can highlight there. So once someone goes in from Google and goes to the profile, then you can see what do they do from here. So they probably go to a program page and or a faculty staff listing page, right? Or back to the home page. or for people from Wayne.edu, right? Where do they go? So this is either profile or whatever. And so this is a pretty interesting way to get an idea, not necessarily from an individual, but just from a bulk kind of user perspective of where the most popular paths are through a site.
And profile, which profile is
So this isn't going to qualify what profile they're at. It's like profile / somebody. So it's just clumping all of the individual individual profile views into one page. So that way, like engineering. Well, let's go back here. So if you go to faculty staff and you go to
It's mostly for faculty or staff. Not
yeah.
department.
So if you went to like one of these people, right? This is like a research like this is like an example of one of those pages. So they hit here. So a lot of people who are coming in from both Google and from Wayne.edu are trying to find somebody, right? Or information on somebody. Acquisition, this is going to tell you where people are coming from prior to them getting to your site. They have this nice fancy like overview screen now. This didn't used to be here, so if you haven't been here in a while, you can see kind of the top channels of acquisition. So this is like organic search. Referrals means, so organic search means that somebody went to Google, typed in a term that they wanted to search for, and they clicked on your URL within the natural search. So if you did like ENG degree, whatever, right? So they clicked on one of these bottom area ones here. Paid search are any ones that if you do actually pay for search, it'll qualify those as different traffic into your site. If you're actually paying for a search term and they come up on one of these side items, it'll just qualify it differently. Google has since 2 years ago or a year and a half ago started to by default use like secure all of their Google regular results and searches. So if you go to Google right now, I think they've started, like if you just type in google.com or http google.com, they've started forcing everybody to secure Google, which essentially means that it's great for people who want, their privacy kept and stuff like that, but that means that your actual search terms, so if you go down here to keywords and you go to organic, most of them are going to be not provided, and that's because they're coming from a secure connection, and you can't get that information out of the URL. So unfortunately, that does suck, but it's something that we're gonna have to live with from now on, and so you can't really rely on like finding these search terms into your site through Google Analytics. There are other ways to do it. So if there are other tools that we kind of have set up, I don't know if they're by default on every site within Wayne.edu, which do mine all of the actual server logs, which will give you the full referrer to your site, even if it's from a secure site. So that is a possibility. So going down here, we have our channels of like what's providing the traffic, organic search, referrals. Direct referral means from another site. It could be from Wayne.edu sites. It could be from some other site. If you click on that, you can get a list of those sites. So this could be from Wayne. These are going to be outside of whatever profile view you're on. So technically, even though cs.wayne.edu is the old computer science domain, and they would be considered an engineering site, they're out of the domain engineering.wayne.edu. Same thing with eng.wayne. And they would be considered outside sites. And then within these, I think you can go in even deeper. And this is interesting when you get, so this is like search, obviously, programs, pretty big one, right? Graduate admission programs, that's weird. I don't even know what this is. Admissions, graduate education. This better, okay. Yeah, but it's probably a copy of, I can't edit this, whatever. It's probably an exact copy of this page. It's just at a different URL. So, and so this is really interesting when you get outside of Wayne.edu, right? And you go to, and you see a source of or referral, and you go to like this, msinus.com. So this is going to be, these are going to be different for every site. But then you go and you see, well, what are these pages that are sending traffic to our site? They could be good, they could be bad. This is where we found like some really crazy international sites that like rank or talk about universities, and they just like gather the information from like anywhere and isn't accurate. And so like this just has us on a big list of U.S. universities for mechanical engineering, and it's like a rankings, but like what is that ranking and stuff like that. So a lot of these will be like this one obvious. Well, this one might be semi-legitimate. If you see some, like if you go to some of these, you'll find that a lot of them are just like, I forget what they're called, but they're really like link bait. So they just literally mine other websites. They take their content and they shove them on their site to get more traffic into their site, to get their page rank higher, to either sell their domain eventually, to be able to change the content on that page eventually, to have ads or more other stuff on it. It's just this huge, crazy game that people do to make money. All right, so those are the channels. The all traffic, so direct traffic means they typed in the URL or they went from a bookmark. Often, sometimes direct traffic will be from email too. So if they're in an email client like Outlook, an email client on their phone, OS X Mail, not a browser-based client like Yahoo, Gmail, stuff like that. If they're on an outside of a browser and they click on a link that goes to your site, that's going to be considered a direct click also, because there was no originating URL from the browser's perspective. It's like search term.
No, source.
So like you want to, so if you went to like all traffic, so if you wanted to look for referral that came from what site?
Mastersstudies.com.
Okay, let's just type in masters. So you got nothing there. So
How about master?
nothing. When
Maybe a different time frame, or
yeah, maybe a different time frame.
Oh, this is an active thing we're paying for.
So if you're paying for it through an ad network, it may not come from that domain. It may come from the ad network's domain. So if we go down here,
to your future.
we can go to your future.
No, like you just have to go down or go back up.
Yeah, your future has.
Somewhere through.
Yeah, so this came from
And then go.
ATEC page. We have some links to them.
I think what we have is what you just described, that link bait or that like pay for space. No.
Do you have the page that?
Masterstudies.com, and I just want to know if there's a way to check the quality or the results from this campaign.
Masters Studies.
Master Studies.
You know what URL that they're linking to?
Good thing that thing redirected to someplace sane, because I typed it in wrong. Could have been gone anywhere. All right, so so like find your program. Do you have like a thing in here? Like, can we search for like country, U.S.?
Yeah.
Anyways, so I don't want to go through too much of this.
That's fine. I don't want to be too specific.
But so like if you pay for one of these side ads, so like one of these side ads might not actually be served through masterstudies.com. So like usually side ads like this. So did you pay for one of these like side placements, or is it literally like one of these things?
Go, just, can you,
Because like
no. Can you type in at the top search Wayne State? Get that, and I'll tell you what we're paying for.
okay,
I hope you're not going to use this training. You can edit it out.
this training's going live all over the place. All right, so like this right here.
Yes.
Okay, so this is going to Master Studies to Wayne State University. Yep. Okay. We got a picture there. We got all this stuff here. So link to. Okay, so this is linking to this individual page. View MS see, or what is this? Is this like, all right, so these are all of these things. I doubt that they're sending traffic to your site. From the look of this, they're keeping all of these links internal. So, and there's a, please fill out this form. Even this form is this form right here, right? It is an internal form, right? And so they're essentially like
Keeping everything.
keeping
Well,
everything.
They're sending me something, but I don't think I don't know where the leads is viewed or needs.
So the leads are staying with them.
And then they're giving us.
So they're not linking to you specifically because then they have no value. Their value is to keep them here to get them to fill out this form.
And then they can continue to sell.
Yeah, so who knows what, so like,
They're telling you that they've got a captive audience.
yeah.
You don't know why they're selling it to you. It's just a matter of them what happens to that Excel sheet. So we can talk about that offline.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to see if there's a.
Yeah, but so they're not actually referring any traffic to you because they're not linking to you. These campaigns are what I showed before with the analytics like URL builder. These are the actual campaign names, and this is the actual email, right? And then that email will have whatever links are from, actually this is two separate emails, and these are the different links within those
How
emails.
do you get something, like, what are you doing on your back end to get something into the campaign? Like Go URLs don't go specifically in here.
They do.
How do,
So,
how do we identify that?
crap. So if you go to, when we create the URLs, we ask that information. So because we're using Go URLs to create the shortened URLs for emails, we already know that information. But like when we go in to add a new URL, right, we put in a source medium and campaign. If you see,
If you go back to the then right where you're at with that Go URL thing where you
So,
were at,
like,
then
hold up. You may see Go URLs in here that didn't. Oh, so all of these actually do have a campaign on them. But if you go back to here, these are all like today at Wayne, email, blah, blah, blah. So all of these are probably like the most 500 are probably from email. But say we did one that was just like,
search on that one for ATEC or Macomb.
I can't do it through this interface. So
So how do you search for, like, how do we find this, how do we track by individual Go URL back to an analytic?
So let's go in here. I'll show you. So whenever there's a campaign named on it, also if you click on your little name up here, you can like get to specific information or get to all of your things. I know that this is a problem. Okay, so within the campaigns, we have already dictated, like within the Go URLs, we've already dictated a campaign name of Macomb ATEC. And then if you click on it, then you get to see, like we have a Go URL from a billboard and a Go URL from an ad. These, are you sure these didn't get mixed up? That many people come from billboard? Okay, so then that's going to skew your data, and so it's like not at all.
I mean, we're defining billboards raw there.
Oh, okay. So that's what the acquisition. Social is going to give you an idea of like the social. Actually, let's go back to engineering because that probably has some stuff with it. Actually, let's go to like CFPCA. David, where are you sending? Like, do you have like when you like use when you tweet out like URLs and stuff like that? You're not always sending them back to CFPCA.Wayne to do, right? You're sending them to like various sources, right?
Most commonly, things that we tweet out will go back to the news and announcements space of one of the departmental sites.
Okay.
So like today we tweeted about the passing away of Joy Colby,
Yeah.
and her obituary. Her obituary was in Detroit News last week, but we posted in Art and Art History's news announcements area the obituary about Joy Colby
Okay.
as it was summarized in the campus media report. So what we tweeted out was art.wayne.edu/news
News, okay.
/ and then the unique numerical
ID.
ID for that news announcement.
Okay.
And that's most common in our tweeting. So it's not like we're pointing people back to just www.cfpc.wayne.edu.
Yeah, that's totally cool. I just wanted to see like where we could get some data. So like right here, we have from social like network referrals. This is to art. Like this doesn't include today. So your thing was from today. So let's just like include today in here.
And I don't know if, that particular one will come up because it went out at 2 o'clock. So it was only an hour ago.
Yeah. So that might not actually come up. But this is where you can see like the social traffic from each different social network and kind of where they're going. So even if they were a Go URL or if it was a Bitly URL or Hootsuite URL, you can see all of that. We don't use this data hub thing at all. Landing pages. So social, like these are the pages that, from a social perspective, traffic is coming into. So this could be from, like maybe one or two from that article here from today. Okay, so no, this one, it's not. But this will give you a good, interesting, what is this? Trackbacks. This is new. So there are people that are linking to your stuff. And the system is specifically giving you attribution for it or telling you that it's being attributed to you. That's interesting. That I thought that was going to be that image. Interesting. I don't know why this would have.
Well, it looks to me like the printmaking program at Smith is helping to promote the fact that this year's Mid-America Print Conference is actually happening at Wayne State.
Yeah, so that's interesting. These are this trackbacks are like back to like the blogging days. Whenever somebody links to your blog, like WordPress or Movable Type or whatever, will like ping that original URL of that blog entry to say, hey, we just linked to you, and then you can like have a list of all the places that link to your blog post. And so it's interesting that they put this in here now. I've never actually played with it. We're going to ignore the rest of this. So this user flow is also in social. So you can see like per network here what user flow people are going through. And this is all going to be specific to this segment that you apply or create or multiple. So then let's go down to search engine optimization. This will give you, okay. So most of these sites, I don't know if art is set up specifically for art, but like let's go to, pretty sure engineering setup. So engineering, this is where you can see where your site is coming up in search results, right? So this is not necessarily they do have average position, right? So for engineering technology, there are an average of, in this month, right? There's an average of 2,500 impressions and 70 or so click through to the engineering site with an average position of 4th to 5th. So this is pretty interesting to kind of like your 2.5 for this one, or one for Wayne State University Engineering, okay? But like this ePennet, I don't even know what this is, but this like through here you might find some specific or interesting things that you come up higher for. Oh, that's why. So there was all the water stuff that went out through PR and stuff like that too. So you'll also, like I just did, I went and typed in this and I didn't get us in the top 3. This is another one where you're like, you have to take this with a grain of salt because you're not going to be able to reproduce it. Because Google results are based on like your geolocation, your geolocation, your past preferences, all that other stuff, and so you might not be able to reproduce that. But you'll find interesting search terms that you come up pretty high in, and you get to see what ones you come up in a list that gets a lot of impressions, right? This is also interesting to see like landing pages. So from search, where are people coming into? Look at this WC water survey. It's like the most incoming clicks. Not most incoming clicks, but from a level of impressions and click-throughs, like has a high search value. Let's go down here graphically, and then where those searches are coming from. Last thing we'll go through is behavior. Overview is kind of like every general page, which kind of gives you page rates, bounce rates, and stuff like that. Let's get off engineering. Let's go to like, let's go to another school in college. Let's go to Lake College of Ed. So this will give you an overview of not only page views, unique views for this segment or all the segments that you have in here of what's like just overall in general. Behavior flow is the same type of thing as that visitor flow, where you can see from a specific landing page, where did people go? And this is interesting that like, highlight this. So a lot of people like, actually, you know what? Could be wrong. Yeah, so the starting page is going to be the same as the landing page. But then where do people go, like most popularly from the home page, right? You can see back to the home page, which is interesting, programs page, AS, faculty staff profiles, and then or one of those other pages. Site content is where you can get actually the pages that people are visiting and how many page views they have and what the percentage of that total is. So just this is like the old school, if you think about like hits on a website, like this is essentially what that is. And then you can see like how many unique views and average time on that specific page. Like so for example, like the home page might have a specific thing, but like your programs page, you might want to keep the time on this page down as much as possible, right? You want people to find a program and get off to it as quickly as possible. You want people lingering around here because that probably means that they're lost. Then, like, let's see what else is interesting inside of here. Bounce rates. The homepage has like this page here has a high bounce rate. So this About IT page, actually let's not do that. Let's just click on this. This is like about this specific program. And this might be that these all link off. Yeah, so this has a high bounce rate because it might speak to a lot of what this program is about, but all of the primary links on here, there's this professional org page, but like all these are actual professional organizations. So, you know, people might just be landing on this page and saying, oh, let me get to one of these other ones because you know, that's maybe what they're interested in. But a lot of the links on that page are external. That's why it probably has a high bounce rate. Got to drill down. This you could go into like the actual URL structure of like within TED. So like this is interesting when you have things grouped into specific folders or areas. You can see like which of those areas are have like a high visibility from a page view perspective, right? That like TED, TBF, and AOS are, you know, like the top 3 with a couple of these pretty close in there. But then you can dive down into that a little bit more. Landing pages is very interesting because often this is, so even though like the home page itself from an individual page is we'll go to this graph view here, right? So even though the home page itself has a high number of first time, like 17% of visitors are visiting that page first. If you think about it, that's a pretty low number compared to if you were to add up all the other pages. So like 80% of visitors to the College of Education website are coming in, their first visit is not to the homepage. It's to one of those interior pages. And so making sure that, you know, they're oriented really well of where they're at in the overall site. Like this AOS About IT, it sounds like this, it's already looking like this page is a really top entrance page. So it's probably high search engine, it has a high search engine value, and then people are jumping right off to someplace else. Well, this is a good opportunity then to start, you know, peppering in not only like side promo buttons for like, information session or like request information or apply now. Because even though the audience might be looking for those professional organizations, that's the only calls to actions. Might be add some more calls to action. You could probably maybe drive the bounce rate down a little bit to get them to click on one of those links. So these are the types of things that like Google Analytics from just looking at the graphs and initial pages isn't going to tell you. You really have to like look at the data over time, look at the individual pages, right? So this bridge certificate program, like this is another really high page, high landing page, and so high traffic landing page that has a lot of information, ton of information on it. Probably has a really high search engine value because of it's using both headings, like full headings, plus their shortened like versions, and so those might actually be, and especially if these are headings. Nope. Okay. So if they're headings, this might have even gotten higher. Like it gives higher value to these because it's basically saying that if this is a heading level, say 2, or heading level 1, if these were all heading level 2s, it's basically saying that all of these relate to this information. And so that's the huge value of like real structure, like semantic HTML, is that it gives the document a structure that then search engines can relate to each other for optimization. Exit pages is another interesting area that tells you pages that were the last page people visited before they left your site. That might be good. So the home page might link a lot to external pages, which is great. There's About IT, we already know about that because it's got a high bounce rate. But then like these art therapy degree outcomes, this could be that they're linking off to, the artexperience.org or arttherapy.org or all these other organizations. So it could be that legitimate, right? Or it could be that the outcomes aren't all that great and people are just leaving because they don't they've quit this program, right? And so you have to investigate what the page content is. This one obviously is not doing that. It's actually linking to outside organizations. So like site speed, this is another important one that, okay, so it does look like they started integrating this right into here. I thought it was going to be up there, but this tells you information about how fast your page is loading. Obviously, the faster the page loads, the more apt a user is to click on links. The more likely it is that they're going to click on links because the barrier to a link click is lower. Because if they don't have to wait for a page to load in, they're more likely to just flip through a whole bunch of them and not think of the consequence, right? If they know it's going to take 30 seconds to load a page, they're far less likely to click on a page. And so this is where you can see like which ones are doing good and which ones are doing bad. Like this counseling compared to the average. This one's really high. I bet you this has a big image on it. Does it?
It has video on it.
Oh. But it's not actually embedded.
That video is like 20 minutes long.
Oh, it's not actually embedded though. Interesting. Usually we see this with large images that are like one page is like they'll take a Rick and MJ photo or whatever that was like the raw from a camera. All right, speed suggestions. It tells you which page to try to like. We try to do as much as possible from a template perspective, but sometimes like purely the page content has images that, are in graphs or whatever on it that you have to use. And so, site search. Actually, you know what? We don't use site search on your site and or Wayne.edu, so this is not going to show up. Yeah, I don't even bother with this. Events, this is where you can see those actual events, which are errors and or Form A submissions for sure. This site, actually, you don't have any in here, which is good. And then in-page analytics is pretty interesting too. I'm going to skip over experiments because we're not going to get into that today. So in-page analytics shows you what your page looks like and gives you all of kind of the traffic from this page to another page like within the actual context of the page. So, that's loaded full view. Here we go. Let's give that a second. Okay, here we go. So, as this is loading in, it's going to, so it'll tell you kind of like below the fold, right? You don't have a lot of information below the fold. Longer sites do. So the majority, because your menu is so high up on the homepage specifically, right? That's where most people are going to be clicking. But if you go into an interior page, like so if we went to degrees and programs, this will load all of this here. Let's see where this takes us. Let's see what so like 56% of the links are below this line. So like this actually does work. And it'll tell you, which ones are the most popular and how. So, I don't know, like this is not necessarily as great as a heat map, but it will.
How did you get there again?
So in-page analytics under behavior. This, Carolyn, for the star.wayne.edu, the all Wayne.edu will not work. So you have to go into one of those other things. So the two areas that we basically went through everything. Events we didn't really go through because we don't really have any on this site. I'm trying to think of some sites that we have this on, like, well, if we go to wayne.edu. The two areas I did not go through were experiments, which allow you to do A/B testing and be able to test different variations of a page to accomplish a goal. And I didn't go through goals. So goals are the ability to define specific things, like let's go to engineering. Engineering had a good one here. Goals are far more useful than the events thing. So there are two sets of goals set up here. So it's get to the request or visit form and then complete them. And so we can see the difference, right, of who actually got to them. But if we went to like complete the RFI, this here will also allow us to see like not only what that destination URL was, but like where they came from that completed this. So most like came from Wayne.edu or from Google. And then from here you can do a reverse goal path. So you can see like, so they ended up at the final request info. We're doing a specific tracking for this. Their previous was obviously the request info page, right? Because the form is on the request info page and it doesn't actually go to a thank you specific URL. But before that, they were on the home page or they were on request info, which means that they filled this out and then there was an error and they got back to the page and then they filled it out again and they completed it. And then, or they had two errors, right? And then like they got there, they erred, and then they got it done. Or they went right to the form and got it done. Or they were on the admissions, and then they went to the advising page, and then they went to the request info, and then they completed. So this is pretty interesting to see that. And then you can also see this like funnel. Well, this funnel visualization it's only one step. Right? It's just to complete this. If you had like a checkout process, you could define. They added to the cart first, or they viewed the product, they added it to the cart, and then they checked out, and then completed the checkout. You would actually see a funnel of like how many people did what for what products. This is just so simple. It's just filling out a form, so you just get who created the this and who didn't. And so, yes.
I just did that RFI
Yes.
for the
So
creative.
We can
page.
set this up for you.
Okay, my question was going to be whether it's automatically.
It's
already
not
been created.
automatically. So, because the action is already in the system, we just need to go in and for creative.wayne, and this is one thing that I have to make a change because I can't do this like live at the second, right? So if you go into the goals, you'll see like there's this setup goals area, and you go to setup goals. this gives you a list of all of the goals that are on your site. And then you can add a new goal. And unfortunately, the way that you set up goals is very limited. And so there's all these like ones for outside of higher ed, like revenue, acquisition, like inquiry and stuff like that. So like finish an application or form, and then or you can do a custom, like say we did like this submission, right? That's next step. And then the goal description is going to be like completed request for information. And then this is where you have to decide, did they get to an actual destination page? And I can make this a little larger. So did I get to an actual destination page, or did they stay on the site? What constitute this goal? Most of all of ours are they either got to this like thank you page, or we triggered a specific event. And so on this creative site, we're going to use event, because every time that a Form form is filled out, we automatically trigger this this event, right? So the category, and I have to look this up. Yeah. Events. So this is, is this not tracking right? You know what? It might only be in this account, because we're not pushing events into both accounts. We're only pushing them into one account. All right, so the event category is for me. The event action is, so this would be, category would be for me. Action is submit. And this is going to be form dash. And then let's go find your form real quick. What was this called? There we go. So this ID. All right, so this. You can also put a dollar amount. So like if you did some like crazy stuff, and in higher ed it's not all too easy to do, but say like you took an average student and through their whole lifetime of what is their overall lifetime contribution to the university from a dollar perspective, right? And then you slice that up into how many on average of those students are CFPCA students, right? And then how many of those students on average enroll, right? Like, so compared to how many like are prospects to enroll, and how many of those on average fill out this form to get to that enrollment, like what's the percentage there? You could yield that all the way down to a dollar amount. So potentially, for everyone who's graduated and gave back to the university or whatever, right? However they work at the university from a student perspective, if you segment that all the way back down to who filled out this form in order to go all the way to that and give back that amount of money. It could be like, whoever fills out this form, they're, 8% likely to contribute to this full dollar amount, right? And then you could say 8% of that full dollar amount is $150 or whatever. Like, so you could say, if for every person who completes this form, the university is likely to get like it's worth $8, right? It's worth like $150 or whatever. And so it's really difficult in higher ed. But like if you're a company selling stuff, it's probably pretty easy to see how many people add a thing to their cart, right? What's the average cost and all that other stuff. So if you can get them to add it to their cart, they're like 90% likely to check out with it. So that getting that action for getting the goal of them adding a single for their first visitor, and they add something to their cart, they're worth so much money. And so this now, even though it's not actually recording this here on your site, it's all set up to do it. So that way we can see this goal completion within the creative, David. So when we go back to reporting, we go to goals overview. It's not going to show anything at the second, but it will start showing in as soon as we set that up. Goals have a defined number that you can, so goals actually there is, oh, you know what? Maybe they removed that now. Oh, so 20 goals. Yeah, so it was 5, there was 4 slots, like goals, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then like goal sets, and then you could do 5 goals per set. You used to be able to. So yeah, it looks like you still do that. That's weird. So choose your goals wisely. You only have 20. That's why a lot of people set up different views for different goals and stuff like that. Okay, so I went through all of the interface and all of really, teasing a little bit of data out of it and what to look for, what not to look for, and stuff like that. The other thing that is a complement to this is Google Webmaster Tools, and we have this set up for most sites. And if yours is not set up, or we can just double check for whoever wants access to this. So like let's go like business, they're in here, right? And so this is old. Don't worry about if this is like suspected hacking. There was like this weird thing on our footer that was there for a minute and now it's gone. So this note is probably still in there. We already cleared this all with Google. So search appearance, structured data. So we have okay, so what else was I going to show you? Search queries. So this is where you can see kind of more likely what terms people are using and how many impressions you have. This is far more accurate than the Google Analytics version because this is actually coming from Google.com search and not necessarily the traffic coming into your site, right? This is like this whole interface is about making sure your site is crawlable for the top, like top search terms and search engine optimized and all this other stuff.
So that search within, like,
No.
if I've gone to business or anywhere?
No, this is on Google.com.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is anywhere. But that also does include the Wayne.edu search. So since we use Google Custom Search, whenever you click on this and you search for something, you're going to, what?
That goes back into the other.
Yes, that goes back into Google Webmaster Tools because we're just using, like, when you search for, like, MBA, right? This right here, this frame is actually Google. Like, this, it's not us. It's, like, let's go, oh, this is actually that frame. It's actually Google.com. So, yeah, all that data gets stored back in there. This will give you a bunch of other stuff to say, like who's linking to your site, internal links within your site. So like this ASCSB page links to, has 237 links on it, which is crazy. Or like links to it. And then we can do some like pretty interesting stuff inside of here to see like what your status is, like when they did updates and how many pages. So like they didn't well, you know what? We might have added this for something specific too. It'll also show you like keywords within your content of all of your pages, which one has the most significant. This used to be used a lot for like the old school search engine optimization stuff. I wouldn't try to pepper, like some of these through more of your pages. It's not really going to. Google doesn't really look at it as much as they used to. They do look at more of natural language, like sentences now and stuff like that. So if you just added like management 100 times on a page, it won't impact your analytics. And so there's a crawl stats. Some of the other thing that is really interesting is, where is it at? Search appearance. Site links. So if you've ever noticed, you like go to Google and you type in like Wayne State business, right? See how there are these things here? Google kind of they look at your most popular pages and they like kind of create those by default. If you find one in here that you don't want to be like in here, right? Like maybe the contact us doesn't need to be here, or maybe you don't want advising in here. You can use this, or we could use this, whatever, to like demote one of the side links to, and so that way it doesn't actually show up. We couldn't demote yours. Okay, so so that way it doesn't show up in that list. There used to be a way, and I think you might have to have a certain amount of traffic. Yeah, you used to have to have a certain amount of traffic in order to like literally specify what these were. And so I know the top like our main site, we can specify these. Actually, they've changed them. Okay, so maybe we can't specify them anymore. All right, so this is a complement to analytics. It really is more of the search engine side of things that we can definitely give you access to.
Thank you.
Trying to think if there's anything else. Anyone have any specific questions before we go? No? Yes?
Melissa wants to
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. If you have any other questions, you can always email Web at Wayne or call me or whatever, and we can figure it out.